This thing on?
Yes.
Oniric.
Notes to Oniric, Day 1, by Teffer Troy, doctoral candidate, Alternative Narrative Traditions, Université de Montréal, October 12, 683.
Oniric.
Hello, Deirdre. I hope you're well. I'm recording this now because today's a big day. I'm meeting with a talking wolf after lunch. I'm a bit nervous about it.
Oniric.
A flame that rides the wings of worlds. A flame that seeks a single torch. The torch burns bright. The torch burns out. The flame remains and rides anew.
Oniric.
It's a dream quest. It's a grail quest. It's a fever dream quest.
Oniric.
Just say hi. Please. Do it.
For fuck's sake. Hi, Deirdre. Hope you're well. You're well rid of this idiot.
Oniric.
Coming fall 2023 in the Podcavern and wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi everybody, I'm Brad.
I'm Laura.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Tom.
And we are the Pixar Pals, or you might know us as
Disney Dummies.
Saxophone.
That's right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pixar Pals. It's the podcast where we go through every Pixar movie, animated movie. I guess they haven't done any others, though. We go through every Pixar movie in chronological order and talk about them. And today, as you might have already gotten the feeling, we're going to be grooving, we're going to be jazzing, we're going to be talking, and it's all about soul.
Oh, man. I would love if someone went into this episode blind, didn't read the title of the episode, and heard the and they're like, oh my god, they're talking about soul today.
It's robots.
They're talking about soul.
Yeah, they knew immediately. They're just like, oh,
You might already
down, I
know.
knew
You might already know.
Surely you've guessed.
Soul.
It was obvious, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought it was obvious, but
We are really good at jazz instrument noises.
Today we are talking and just discussing Soul, which is Pixar's 23rd movie.
Wow.
Pretty wild. We're really getting up there. Yeah, and I might as well just jump right into it, I guess, with some nostalgia factor. Laura, do you want to start us off?
Yep. We watched this movie during the pandemic. I know that not because I remember it, but because Tung told me. And at the end of it, I went, oh, I liked it. And then didn't think about it again after that. But I do remember John Batiste winning the Oscar for Best Original Score at the Oscars that year.
Yeah, and what about you, Tung?
You know,
Same.
I have a very similar nostalgia for Soul like Laura. I do remember watching it at our old apartment. I remember, yes, we're still in the thick of the pandemic. And it was another one of those like Pixar extending the branch of kindness, being like, hey, we know times are tough, so here's another Pixar movie you can just stream at home. And we're all like, yeah. And I think I remember watching the trailer and really like, I feel like the last few movies, and certainly the movies coming after, they're really like from the studio that brought you Inside Out. You remember Inside Out? And the trailer for this is like invoking that with like, you know, the way the soul characters look in that world and all that stuff. And they'll be like, from the creators of this and Coco. You remember Coco? And Toy Story. And like those are like the three pillars.
Subtext. Remember when you felt things?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we have another one. What if your soul had an animated movie? And you're like, oh my god. And I remember like being pretty excited about the thought of like, okay, seems like a really logical step for Pixar to now, like, what other deeper meaning feeling can we like explore in an animated setting? And I think it made sense for Soul to happen. But yes, I remember watching the movie and also liking it. I remember liking it a lot, actually. But yes, just like Laura, I kind of never really thought about it again. So I'm not sure if that was the effect of a home release pandemic movie when you like threw it on and then just kind of forgot about it because you don't have that theater experience that you would get, right? So yeah, all to say is like I enjoyed it, but watching it again yesterday was really, I didn't remember a thing, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel this definitely came out. I feel like this was almost peak COVID. It was probably like
Is it
what,
2021?
mid to late 2020.
It was like December 2020, or if not
Yeah.
2021, but it was a Christmas release.
Yeah.
The Christmas we all were told we had to stay home. The first
And we did stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about you, Sam? What's your memory of it?
So my memory is kind of similar. We were all at home. Yeah, I remember this being kind of, I don't really remember watching trailers for it or anything. I knew it was coming out to Disney Plus. For me, I kind of remember it being talked about a lot because it was Pixar's first African American main protagonist, and they hadn't had any African American main characters really before. Frozone's pretty secondary, so this was like a big deal. And I kind of remember that being like a big thing surrounding this movie whenever I was reading about it. And I remember watching it, and I remember a point in the film that I was just like annoyed and like checked out. So like I remember
I know a point. I know a point.
I'll be, maybe you do. I'll be interested if you do, because anyways, but it didn't bother me as much this time around, but we'll get to it, and I'll let you know how I feel later.
I'm so
I guess.
curious. I'm trying to think, but
Yeah.
I don't actually.
I gotta write it. I'll write it in a note.
Yeah, write it down.
Yeah, I feel like even I don't know. We must not have discussed back then what your issue was.
I feel like you'll know once I say it.
Right. I feel like pretty much everybody's nostalgia, I feel like, would be pretty similar for this movie, just because of when it came out, how it came out, the situation we were all in, stuck at home and everything. But yeah, I would say very similar to everybody else. My memory of this is very limited. I do definitely remember us watching it, but I don't remember anything about the movie beyond just watching it. Like, I know I saw, it's one of those movies where I'm like, I know I've seen this, but it felt like I was watching it again for the first time when we watched it for this. So yeah, I don't really remember anything. I remember being like, about it when it was done. I feel like I've been really negative on a lot of the more recent movies, but I do kind of remember this one. It didn't really like blow me away. Like you were saying, Tung, I feel like the trailer had him falling into the sewer or the manhole or whatever, and then the trailer is basically just like, these are the soul characters. And I remember being like, well, this just looks like an Inside Out ripoff in a way, like feelings and soul, and they look the same, and blah blah blah. So I feel like I was just kind of like, they're recycling all their ideas already. But yeah, so that's kind of like my vague memory of it. And I guess we'll see if I still feel the same way after the summary or not. Yeah, did anybody have anything else before we jump into the summary to go over with this one?
No, let's get into it. I want to know what part Sam despises with her entire soul.
I can't wait.
All right. Well, with that, Laura, take it away.
Here I go. We open.
Oh, also, sorry, Laura, I wanted to add like a little hack that just happened, a little idea that happened when we first started doing the summary yesterday. I was like looking at our setup and I was just like, man, we've done so many of these episodes. Laura was doing the summary, obviously. And I'm like, we've done all these summaries before, but why haven't we thought about bringing our laptop in with us and writing the summary like where the TV is? Because me and Laura both have just been writing it on our phones while...
That's insane. You two are
crazy.
insane.
And
You do it on your laptops?
Yeah, we've
You've
I
been
use
doing
a
it on your
keyboard on
laptops
my
the whole
iPad.
time.
We've been doing it on our phones this entire
Thanks for telling us,
entire
guys.
time. And Laura yesterday is
insane.
writing like a speed demon, but I'm
was great.
curious. I'm curious because I was like, I won't belabor this point too much, but on the phone you can only say so much before like things are happening, so your sentence structure is just shit. And Laura certainly wrote even more, so I'm wondering how long the summary is going to be.
Longer than Coco. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Shall I dive in?
Yeah.
I'm gonna start. Okay, we open with a discordant jazz cover of "When You Wish Upon a Star." Instantly, I'm back in high school band, specifically grade 9 band, because they were not very good. Like, high school bands are better than that, but I think these are beginners.
It felt
I think these
like
are freshmen.
It felt like a junior high school band.
Maybe, yeah. Except for that trombonist, because she's killing it, which is too bad because she's getting really into it. The teacher, who we're going to learn a little bit more about soon enough, is like really impressed. And then the classmates start laughing at the trombonist. And that is just such a bummer and so high school or junior high or whatever it is.
I'm going to sound the alarm for the trombone.
I knew it. I was going to say
Trombone
the
is
trombone.
nothing without a trombone player.
I'm not saying the trombone.
Give it to the student.
I'm not giving it to the student. I think the instrument, the trombone, fucks a very underappreciated instrument.
That's like saying clowns fuck.
No, it's not. No way.
What?
No, it's
How is that
definitely not.
anyway?
No.
No.
I would say,
It's the
though, that
silliest
the
instrument.
saxophone definitely fucks
Later?
more.
Saxophone.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saxophones in general.
I'll just put it out there right now since we're on the top of music. I think jazz fucks in general.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, agreed.
But
Every time I watch a movie about jazz, I'm like, I want to go listen to jazz.
You guys want to watch La La Land later?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We should just all go to New Orleans.
New
Oh,
Orleans.
yeah.
New Orleans.
New Orleans. I went there once.
Nolans.
Get some beignets.
Get some jambalaya. Okay, so the teacher's like, none of this, no laughing at other people for having passions, perhaps sparks in life. He talks about hearing live jazz for the first time, and the students look vaguely inspired, but only as inspired as high school students can be. And then
one of them slightly raises their gaze.
Yeah.
That's as good as you're going to get.
Exactly. That's all you can hope for as a high school teacher, from what I understand. But anyways, principal's here. Principal offers this teacher, whose name is Joe, we learn, offers him a full-time permanent job with benefits. Wee-oo, benefits fun.
Wait, you can't Wii U benefits?
Love my benefits.
Sure you can.
I mean, I guess.
Love my benefits.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Joe also has some of the longest fingers I've
Yes.
ever seen. Those are piano player hands for sure.
Joe's fingers.
That is the most like adult thingy. Yeah, benefits.
Wii U
Yeah, pension.
Benefits.
Oh, you're gonna take that back when we're living off my pension one day. Don't you worry, my friend. Okay, so Joe is like, whoa, this is a big deal. I better go talk to mom. So he goes to visit his mom, who is a tailor or a seamstress, or I'm not sure exactly what her job title would be, but she is, of course, pressuring him to take the job because moms want benefits for their kids. And then he gets a phone call from a former student. And let me just say at this point, this movie really is moving at a quick pace, you know, like jazz itself sometimes. Not all the time, because jazz does whatever it wants. And this student says, you know, I am playing in a group with the Dorothea Williams, who's a saxophonist. And Joe's so impressed by this student, whose name is Curly, I believe. But then Curly says, we need a pianist for tonight. We are a 4-piece who only has 3 people right now. And Joe's like, oh my God, yes, I'll be there instantly.
Sorry, I thought it was also interesting because we always talk about like show don't tell stuff, and you kind of get the sense that Joe at first hasn't been teaching that long because they say he's a substitute, and they're like, congratulations, you're finally full time. But this guy Curly that calls him has been like through college, like music university or whatever it is, and he's like an older student. So clearly Joe has been doing this for like, I don't know, 10 years or whatever. Like, so I thought that was interesting because you kind of just get the sense that he's like, oh, it's just a short thing. But it's like, oh, no, he's been doing this for like quite a while, like a large portion of his life now.
Yeah. While also pursuing music, as we'll learn.
Yeah.
So he goes to the jazz club and he meets the Dorothea Williams. And he's awkward. He doesn't make a great first impression.
Also, I want to Wii U this shot of him walking in and she's in the spotlight. Playing, what is it, the saxophone?
That's
I think
good
it
stuff.
is. Yeah, that whole setup just fucks right
yeah.
there. Yeah.
This episode is going to have the most Wii U's for non-characters.
We should also mention Dorothea isn't impressed by his awkwardness, but she does fuck. And she does invite him to step up to the piano.
The whole quartet fucks. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
There's a high fuck count, you're right, in this movie.
Yeah.
So Dorothea kicks things off and Curly picks up little, what do you call that when you have the little snaky thing on the snare?
It's a brush.
The brush on the snare, and the bass player in the background is doing their thing. And Joe's like, "What are we playing?" And Curly's like, "Be cool, man." And so Joe just jumps right in and starts freestyling. And it's glorious. And Joe we see him really get lost in the music. And part of that is just looking at his hands. This is where I wrote down hand animation. Tough? ? Is it really hard to animate hands? I remember talking about hands a long time ago in Disney Dummies.
It can be, for sure. At this level, I would think.
I would say yes. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
have to animate a ton of finger movement in TV animation. You're usually swapping hands and not doing anything intricate like this. So yes, I would say I feel like it comes up a lot because it's notorious, and they even make a joke in this movie about how drawing hands are hard.
Yes.
So that's like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very overarching like
And
thing.
if you think about it, like in what we do anyway, like Sam and I, we sell swap hands. So it's like you're only changing one thing for each hand, but they're changing 5 things on each hand. So they're right away over quadrupling or whatever the amount of work to do it. But maybe we'll get into it later, actually. I'll save it for particulars and animation angle and stuff.
He's got beautiful hands, though.
They are massive hands.
Truly. And our new friend Dorothea is impressed, and so she says, "Come back at 7. The first show's at 9." Joe has got his big break.
I like the animation of when he loses himself in the moment here, and the background is like strobing, like the lights are kind of almost like cords of light behind him. They're like pinging to the music as he's going, and it's like
He's in the
it's
zone,
really
man.
well done. Yeah, it's really
almost
well done.
as if he's in another world. So Joe's on cloud 9. He is completely distracted on the way home. He doesn't realize that he's almost crushed by a pallet of falling bricks. He's almost run over by cars. He's almost hit by flying fruit. None of those take him down, but a manhole does. He falls into a manhole, and then we see this tiny blue glowy version of Joe waking up in what seems like infinite space.
We're just skipping over the whole animation of him falling.
This
and,
happens
like, how
first,
insane
and
that
then he
was.
falls more. I
Oh,
think.
he falls more
Yeah,
after?
yeah. He
Okay.
like this happens, and then he falls.
And then
even
he
more.
falls down to the Sam's background,
Oh my God.
which
okay.
we'll talk about
All right.
soon, listeners.
Okay. I'm just really excited for it.
But there is some cool falling animation at this point with lots of like lines and yeah.
I'm sure
cool
you'll talk
Yeah,
about
visuals,
yeah.
Yeah, that's the stuff I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So he wakes up in what seems like this infinite space, and he's on a conveyor belt that's heading toward a white light in the darkness. He's going towards the light. So on this conveyor belt, there are other blue creatures as well, and they basically tell him that he's died. A little bit shocking for Joe. Everyone else seems quite cool with being dead, but Joe's panicking a bit. He refuses to accept the fact that he's dead, and so he runs away from the light while everyone else is moving towards it. He manages to escape this conveyor belt, and then he falls through more seemingly infinite space. He changes form as he goes, so this is where we get some of that animation too.
Okay.
And we see like I think a black and white version of him,
Yeah.
like all different shapes,
So
and
cool.
compositions.
Yeah,
So
that whole
cool.
thing is so
Yeah.
cool.
Listeners, it's hard to capture this one with words, so just go watch it.
Yeah, it's like it becomes he's like almost line work, and it's
Yeah.
sketchy, and then there's like
Yeah.
psychedelic geometry coming
some
around,
ripples,
Yeah.
some sort of like movie chalkboardy type feelings with its line. Yeah, I mean, that's the best I can describe it.
It's
But
very cool though.
Thank you for
Yeah.
painting those word pictures, gentlemen. And so eventually Joe lands in a blue field.
oh, also here it
Yeah.
says Disney Presents
Oh,
And
yeah.
then-
But then it never does a title card.
till the very end.
So Brad asked me at the end, and I thought it did, but
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't. It just says Disney Presents.
Yeah, because it got to the. I mean, we'll obviously get to the end eventually, but I was like, I probably shouldn't talk about this, Sam. But I was like, did they only just show the title? But yeah, we couldn't remember
Why?
if they showed it or not.
Did you notice?
Well, I guess
I don't
we'll
think it's a
discuss it,
Digino
yeah.
moment, but I interpreted it differently because of how they did it. But sorry. You
Okay, we'll
continue.
talk about it at the
talk
end.
about later.
All right, yeah. We'll wrap it
Okay,
up
so
when we get
he's
there.
in a blue field in a land full of blue, glowy, round babies, and also a large purple scary thing. At least I found it scary. And that purple thing that's made of lines of light is Jerry. And Jerry lets Joe know that the blue baby blobs are, in fact, souls. Joe has not gone to the great beyond where he was supposed to go. Instead, he is in the great before, which has recently been rebranded to the U Seminar. What are you giggling at?
I don't know. I feel like anytime. Sam, are you making eye contact with me? Are you trying to sound some sort of alarm for Jerry? Is that what you're trying to say?
I was surprised. I was surprised nobody sounded the Jerry.
Yeah, I was waiting
I
for
feel
a
like we
moment.
cut you off too much. We want to let you get on a little
That's
roll.
very respectful. Thank you.
But Sam and I are like looking at each other through Zoom, being like, "Do we say it now? No, let her finish. Let her finish. Let Laura finish her sentence.
Wait
Come
for it,
on."
Brad.
Are we doing this?
Wait
Are we
for
doing
breath.
this? Is it happening?
Go ahead.
Is
Go
it
ahead.
happening?
The Jerry's
Jerry
fuck.
fucks.
The Jerry's
Yeah.
fuck. Yeah.
The Jerry.
Counselor
Yeah.
Jerry's. Counselor's Jerry.
Also, again, I think this will there'll be a lot of things to be said in animation angle, I'm sure, but like, wow, the Jerry stuff is extremely cool.
It's very cool. Yeah.
And in addition to the Jerrys, there's also Terry, a little blue guy who is basically like a death accountant.
I think Terry also fucks.
I agree too.
Terry, he's quite a character.
Man, we're really hitting our fuck quota.
I
pretty
know.
quickly.
Yeah.
If this is a first time if anyone's listening for the first time, they're like, wow, they really talk about who fucks in these episodes. And we do. It's the most important
Yes,
thing.
we do. So Terry is made up of kind of these same like lines of light as the Jerrys. But so he's sort of like a death accountant. He's counting all of these beads as these grown souls go towards the light. But one of them is missing. Dun dun dun. Going back to the Great Before, Joe learns that the souls get to Earth through a large hole in the ground. And so he's like, well, see, I'm going to Earth. And he runs off and jumps, but he's kind of magnetically pulled back to the blue land because he's not ready yet. You have to have an Earth badge to go to Earth. And we're going to learn how you get an Earth badge later. So Jerry says to him, here's the deal. You can either go back towards the light like you're supposed to do, or you can remain here as a mentor. So he says, yeah, sure, I'll be a mentor. And then another Jerry takes him away. And then Terry arrives in the Great Before and lets Jerry know that the count is off. And Jerry is like, yeah, you're great at what you do. I'm sure you'll figure it out. And so Terry storms off. I really like that managing up or whatever it was from Jerry. Like, I believe that you can fix this problem you've identified. And then Terry's like, I will. And Jerry doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah, it's so good.
So Joe is brought to a mentor seminar where he learns more about the Great Before and how each soul needs a spark in order to get its Earth badge. So Joe quickly pictures himself inspiring a spark in a young soul and then stealing the Earth badge from that soul in order to return to life on Earth. So it is now time to be matched with a soulmate. And Joe stole a name tag for Dr. Bjorn T. Borgensen, who is called down to be matched with his soulmate. And it turns out that Dr. Bjorn T. Borgensen was a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, so that's not him, but that's okay.
That guy's name sounds like it was a placeholder, and then they just
And then
never
they just
thought of
kept
anything better.
That's amazing. And perhaps that was the case. So Joe is matched with Soul 22, who is resisting going to Earth, despite past mentors, including Gandhi and Mother Teresa, and many others who we'll hear about throughout the movie.
All that, those bits are really fun in the movie. They're very short little like quips that happen in the interactions between 22 and the failed mentors, but I think it's all just it's just fun.
Yeah.
Like figures from history.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just fun, yeah.
Good stuff. And so Joe and his new mentee, Soul 22, go through a door and enter the Museum of Dr. Borgensen's life. And this is meant to be like the first place where they try and find a spark for 22. But 22 makes it very clear she is not interested in Earth whatsoever. And when Joe tries to level with her and be like, listen, I'm not Dr. Bjorn T. Borgensen, she doesn't believe him. But then he uses this kind of machine thing to summon his own museum. And this is where we get to see a little bit more of Joe's life, including his upbringing, but also his more recent life of being turned down for music gigs repeatedly. And this is where we get a bit of a bummer line where Joe says, my life was meaningless.
Yep.
Woof.
Yeah.
You see him eating cake alone or pie alone or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a bit tough. But I think he finds some sympathy from 22 because they come to an agreement. He is going to help her find her spark, and then he's going to take her pass so that he can go to Earth and she can go on to the afterlife and just skip Earth altogether. And so the first thing he tries is music, but music doesn't light her spark. So he says, let's go to this hall of everything that people have been talking about and see if there's anything there. So 22 tries photography, basketball, soccer, and those all create sparks in others, not in her. Baked goods and pizza, nothing. Neither does putting out fires, painting, libraries, chemistry, gymnastics, being the president, or outer space.
Hall of Everything is pretty cool.
Hall of Everything is pretty cool. Here we get a brief scene. I'm not sure if this is related to Mentors, maybe, where Abraham Lincoln is furious that Andrew Jackson is on the 20 and Lincoln is on the penny.
That was like a
funny.
little another
Flashback
one.
to
Yeah.
Mentor.
Flashback thing. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just showing how 22 gets under everybody's skin, basically.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So 22 is like, this isn't going to work. She leads Joe to a box that leads underground, which they crawl through. So yeah, they crawl like into this box underground. And once they're underground, they crawl through this bathroom cabinet to the zone, which is the space between the physical and the spiritual. Ooh.
This place is cool as shit.
Cool. Very
Definitely.
cool. So in the distance within the zone, we see these spooky monster things. And then one of them comes running at Joe and 22, but is lassoed by someone on a psychedelic pirate ship. And this is where we meet a mustachioed man named Moonwind, who climbs off and says, I can help you, to Joe.
Wee wee.
I can't be the only one who does it.
Yeah, he definitely fucks.
Yes, and his pirate ship. I love
so cool.
seeing just a non-generic looking pirate ship. I mean, I guess the structure is generic, but I mean, it's just like bright pink and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yes, I kind of got like, in a way, like Peter Pan vibes about the pirate ship, just because it's the way it's like floating in sand and it's like surrealistic and stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, it was very cool.
Very colorful in a very dreary world. Like, it's nice contrast.
Yeah, and he's got a dope mustache.
Dope
He
mustache.
does have a pretty cool mustache. So Moonwind explains that this monster that chased them was what we call a lost soul. And in this case, he was a hedge fund manager who was obsessed with making trades. Gotta make a trade. Moonwind's pals, who he are kind of like mystics, they help this hedge fund manager find himself again and get back to Earth and live a more present life. And Joe's like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to get back to my body on Earth and get back to my life. And so Moonwind gives it a try. He says, I can help you. Joe, you've got to concentrate on where your body is. And then we see this hole open in the sand of the zone world. And we see New York City. And as Joe is focusing, he hears a heart monitor. He sees hand sanitizer. And he feels the feet and the fur of a cat on his lap. And this is where Joe gets reckless, jumps into the hole, and brings 22 with him. And then he opens his eyes, and he's in the body of the cat, and the cat is in his body. And this is the part that Sam hated. I wrote down body swapping bullshit.
Body swap.
You are
I know you so well.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So we've got a classic surprise body swap.
You know what? Now that
I
you set
fucking hate it.
it up. So did you hate it still when you're watching it this time around? And what do you
because
hate
I
about
knew
it,
was-
I guess?
Well, I hate being duped into it like Brave, where that's not what the movie's about. And then all of a sudden it is very much that. So I don't know, it just becomes like a different tone. I feel like tonally the movie shifts a lot at this moment. And I was just like jarred by that, I guess. I think this time around watching, it didn't bother me as much because I knew it was coming. So maybe it wasn't as jarring and like I was being duped. And I like get story-wise the need to like do it, but I think they could have come up with other, like, I think there was definitely other ways you could have done it. I know like obviously Joe and 22 both have to be there and like stuff has to happen, But I don't like the cat. I don't think the cat's very appealing either. So to look at him, I'm even like he does some funny cat stuff, but I don't know. I just really don't care for the cat thing. And then, I mean, I was going to bring this up later in like critical stuff, but it's just like, it kind of also falls into the trope that I read from Black critics where it's like, oh, the Black character is becoming an animal for the movie. Like that's like a trope and like a thing. And so it's like, this movie's supposed to be taking 2 steps forward, but it's still kind of like falling into these old stereotypes and stuff. And I'm just like, why? So yeah, I don't know. This part, I was like, this isn't it for me. You're already doing all these other things. Like, why are we doing this thing? So yeah, I don't know. It's not, I don't love it.
I'm curious while we're here, Sam and Brad, how did you feel about this moment?
Do you mean Laura and Brad?
What did I say? Sam and Brad?
Yeah.
I want to hear Sam's opinion again.
Yeah. Sam, continue.
Sam, keep ranting. No. Yeah, Laura and Brad.
When it happened, I was like, Sam's going to hate this. And then I think because of that, I was kind of like annoyed by it. It was, yeah. I'll share my like overall thoughts at the end of the movie, but I was sort of like, oh, this isn't where I want the movie to go.
Interesting. We can certainly talk more about it, but
I get those points. It didn't really bother me, but I think I understand why it would bother Sam.
Yes, I think I'm aligned with that opinion as well, but I do now see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, we can discuss it more after after the summary. We'll really dive into it and have a bit of a back and forth.
Yeah.
So this is the point in the summary where I have to now clarify who I'm talking about when I say certain words. So moving forward, when I say 22, I'm talking about 22's soul in Joe's body. And when
we're hearing 22's voice,
yes,
but it's coming out of Joe's body.
Yes. And when I say Joe, I mean Joe's soul in the cat's body.
Oh yeah, and
great.
I mean, not only I feel like I was shedding a lot of hate on the cat, but also just like the white woman coming out of the black man too. It's just like a lot of things that I'm like, oh, okay.
Very much so.
Continue.
And
Continue.
It's also an interesting choice. I'll just like talk about that a little bit more because like in theory, we should in some ways like hear Joe's voice for both of them. Because when 22 as Joe speaks, like it sounds like Joe. They show to us that it sounds like Joe. But when they're talking to each other, they're using 22's voice, which I kind of get, but also it's kind of like, oh, they just really wanted Tina Fey's voice
I think it
continue.
also makes it more clear for like honestly kids.
Yeah.
To know that there's a switch that happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the doctor's back and 22 tells the doctor that the cat can't leave because there's soul in the cat's body that belongs in 22's body. And so the doctor's like, whoa, you stay at the hospital a little bit longer. And then they are left to their own devices. So Joe's like, we got to get out of here, brings 22 out of the room. 22 is struggling to control Joe's limbs and digits as they attempt to sneak out of the hospital. And Joe tries to walk 22 through the hospital as a cat leading a man. And so they make it out onto the streets and into the big wide world of New York City. At which point 22 panics and runs into the street, and Joe manages to find him and realizes that 22 is not just hungry, but probably a little bit hangry. So Joe brings 22 pizza, and you might say some sparks fly.
Yeah, definitely
the pizza,
New York
the
slice.
pizza.
Oh man,
Yeah, the pizza fucks.
Just the food in general, but yes, the pizza.
Yeah, that pizza
but
was
like,
real good.
holy shit,
but also,
that pizza
like,
looks good.
The pizza was carried. It was like on the streets of New York, like on the concrete of New York City, carried by a cat. I was kind of grossed out. I don't know. I couldn't like appreciate the gloriousness of the pizza because I was like, what's on that pizza?
And I'm sure we'll talk about an animation angle and whatever, but just the way that the light reflects on the pizza to make it seem very greasy. And so like, when you're looking at it, like I was like, oh man, I actually want a pizza right now because it looks so fucking real. It looked great.
Yeah.
Yeah, delicious.
Yes, indeed. So you might say when 22 takes her first bite that sparks fly, but they're not the sparks we're looking for. Not quite there yet. Then they set off to 14th and 7th Streets because that's where Moonwind mentioned his corporeal form worked. So they get there, and sure enough, there is a hippie-looking man spinning a promotional sign on the street corner, and that's Moonwind. Moonwind has to keep working, but they make a plan to meet at the jazz club at 6:30 when what was it? Orcus is in Gemini or something like that, 6:30 p.m. And at that point, Moonwind's going to help them switch Joe back to his body and somehow get the cat. No, the cat doesn't need a soul. 22 will go back to the grave before. So they're like, okay, we got a plan in place. Joe hails a cab to get home. And as he's about to get into the cab, who should climb out but Dorothea Williams? I should point out at this point that Joe is still wearing his hospital robes and no shoes on. I don't think he has shoes on. He looks a little silly. So Joe's like, well, gotta go, and jumps into the cab, and he and 22 take off. And my question here is, how did they pay? How do they pay for that cab? Don't worry about it. Then Joe the cat falls victim. They get into the apartment, and Joe the cat falls victim to a patch of sunlight, which is a very cute moment because
happens to the best of us.
Yeah, can't resist a patch of sun, cat or human. And then Joe's phone rings. So they don't manage to answer it, but they get a message from Curly, who says that Dorothea panicked when she saw Joe and 22 and hired someone else for the gig. But Curly has a plan to get Joe back on stage. And this is when we hear a knock at the door. And it is Connie, the trombone playing student from Joe's class. And she says, you know what? I'm quitting the trombone. And of course, like as a music teacher, this is pretty devastating. And because Joe is a cat and can't talk to Connie, 22 takes over the situation. I should mention at this point, 22 as Joe does have pants on, just in case anyone's worried about him talking to his student in a hospital robe.
I will also say in this moment, I think Joe cares less about Connie being there and more about the situation, about his own personal life.
Yeah, I was going to say, he doesn't seem to care about this at all.
Yeah, he just wants Connie gone so that he can like figure his shit out.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He tells 22 to cancel the meeting, but 22 is listening to Connie and connecting with Connie and decides, you know what, I'd rather hang out with this kid than Joe right now. So heads out into the apartment stairwell, sits down for a nice chat. And as she's saying she wants to quit, Connie decides she has this one piece of music she just has to play for her teacher. Even though she wants to quit the trombone, it's kind of like, I just need to play this one thing for you. And as she plays, 22 can see how much Connie loves music. And Connie just kind of talks herself / plays herself into sticking with it. And this is very confusing to 22 because, you know, she just said she was going to do one thing, but now she's doing another thing. Like, how does that change happen? It's a spark. But she hasn't really like grasped that idea yet. But she is willing to go along with Joe's plan. So that's what'll come next. But first, we're going to go to the great before, where Terry confronts the Jerrys with Joe's file because he has, in fact, gone and discovered who was missing from the count. And he says he's going to go to Earth to correct the miscount. So he takes off.
It's going to be a sneaky ninja.
Yeah. So we're back in Joe's apartment, and Joe, as a cat, is attempting to cut 22 as Joe's hair, which is quite funny. But he accidentally pulls what I call a Marshall Erickson. How I Met Your Mother fans will know this reference, where he just cuts a big strip of hair down the middle of his head.
Good reference.
So they have got to take an emergency trip to Dez's. Dez is the barber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, big time. Big time.
Oh boy.
Big time.
Yeah.
Does fucks for sure.
And it's a busy barber shop. He walks in. He's going to have to wait a while, but then he takes his hat off and everyone is instantly like, that's an emergency. Do him first. So Joe gets into Dez's chair and Joe's talking about playing music that night. And Dez is really excited for his big break with Dorothea Williams. But he gets a bit of teasing from the others in the barber shop. Joe does, who's actually 22 soul in Joe's body. And there's quite a funny scene here where 22 just delivers her whole life story in the body of Joe, and everyone just like gathers around like he's a philosopher, and they're all fascinated. And 22 also accidentally burns one of the other patrons named Paul after Paul like insults him, and 22 is kind of like, oh, this is fun, like, yeah, Cool.
Verbally
cool.
burns.
Yeah, verbally burns. Yeah. And and then Terry appears in New York City.
Terry,
Some very cool glowing line animations here.
what's going on here?
We see Terry everywhere.
Terry, like, what's... I'm trying to talk like Terry.
Not
now.
bad.
Is it something like that?
pretty good.
It's kind of like
It's
that.
pretty good.
Like
Yeah,
sly and a
it's
little
You're
bit.
not far off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be a little sneaky ninja.
And so Terry is once again like made up of these cool glowing lines that can camouflage in all sorts of different spaces. And his big plan to catch Joe is to make a hole in the ground that Joe will fall into. But instead he catches Paul from the barbershop, quickly returns him to New York, but Paul is shook. Paul, I don't know, it's going to take a while for Paul to recover from that.
I think that's it for Paul.
Yeah. Meanwhile, 22 is experiencing all the joys of being a human. Running Joe's arm along a fence, great thing.
Jazzing.
Feeling air blow up through grate. Playing with reflective surfaces. Yes, generally jazzing.
Also, isn't like the vent air, isn't that like sewer air?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's
beauty-
blowing on your clothes.
The beauty of the disgust of New York City.
But let me lie down on
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
You know when Marilyn Monroe, like when she...
Yeah.
That was all sewer air. I'm not sure if you knew that.
I put two and two together.
Sadly, that wasn't the worst thing that happened to Marilyn. Okay. So...
Goodness.
I'm so sorry, Marilyn. 22, as she's jazzing, she rips Joe's pants. So he says, we've got to go to Mom's. And they catch the subway across town while enjoying a New York City bagel, because you gotta. There's a busker playing on the subway platform. 22 is entranced. She says she's heard music before, but never felt like this inside. Oh, that's nice. But still not quite a spark, but she's kind of enjoying herself in this big wide world. 22 also doesn't know how to act on the subway and like sees a slushie on the ground and just starts drinking it. That's quite funny.
That's
and
gross.
Yeah. And they,
That's so gross.
I would rather, maybe this is a hot take, but I would rather have a cat like drag pizza across the city and give that to me and I'll eat it than grab that slushie underneath the subway and drink that. That's where I'm at.
I'd want to smell them both first and then decide.
But what if you didn't have a choice? If you had to make a split-second decision?
Then neither.
That's not how the game works.
Okay, so they make it to Mom's shop, and Joe is basically talking into 22's ear and having 22 like parrot what he's saying. And Mom says she won't fix Joe's pants. And so Joe like says a snarky comment to 22, which like 22 obviously repeats, even though Joe didn't want his mom to hear it. But once 22 does say that to Mom's face, it does embolden Joe to ask Mom to really listen to him. And this scene is where we actually go from, as we talked about, like we've always heard 22's voice coming out of Joe's body, but here we're actually listening to Joe's voice coming out of Joe's body.
I like that the camera, it's like over the mom's one shoulder,
Yeah.
and then the camera pans across, so she like wipes the screen, and the voice transitions from 22 to Joe, so you get the audience knows that 22 is speaking, but you're really hearing Joe's words now.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
it's a
I thought it was well done.
clever transition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe tells his mom that he's afraid that if he dies, his life will amount to nothing. And I imagine as a mother, that'll probably break your heart to hear your kid say that to you. So she pulls out Joe's dad's suit and gets it all ready for him. And Joe looks good. I gotta say, it was kind of like a royal blue / navy two-piece with a black shirt and tie.
What'd you think of it?
Black on blue can be controversial, but I thought he looked good.
Yeah. Cotton
Blue on black,
specifically,
black
she
on
makes
blue.
that clear.
Yes. Or wool. I
But she
think it
also
was,
doesn't
not
say
polyester.
like your life won't amount to nothing. Like I feel like there's more conversation that should have happened. I don't know.
so?
It felt cut
I
short.
think it feels like
I
it's
do.
like implied, like with the gesture. It says a lot.
Yeah, it is implied, but I just feel like for how against music and stuff, it felt very quick to me, and then she's just like super pro his career the rest of it, and I don't know. Obviously, it's a weighted conversation, but and it's a kids' movie, and we have to get past this and can't dwell on it for too long. But the moment felt rushed to me.
I could see that.
I can see that, but it didn't feel like that to me. I felt like once the words were said, there was a lot of connections of like, you remind me of your father and like the drive your father had. And then like as an audience member, you put those pieces together and then you kind of keep going. I'm not sure. Would you have wanted to hear more monologuing, I guess?
Yeah, I think because it's the hard conversation, and it's like him being honest about that's how he feels about his life is like triggering this hard conversation that is just ended because she starts making, I mean, maybe that's just me, but it's like, okay, now we're gonna like patch this up by like doing a nice thing and not actually talking about it. Like, I don't know.
I think
just
that
felt like there was a little
generation
more
of
talking through.
Yeah, I'm being devil's advocate, but I feel like that generation of like mothers and stuff like that, they wouldn't be able to like
That's how I took it, was like she couldn't say it, but she could show him.
Yeah. That's
But
what
so
my
she just
mother would
agrees
do.
with music now. Like,
either way,
I
it did
just
feel
that's my
rushed.
thing. Is like
Sure.
she's just fine now. She's not going to push the teacher thing ever again. She's cool with his shows. Like we've just totally flipped her mind just by saying I'm going to amount to nothing. Like,
I mean, it's a
and
pretty
now
powerful
we're good.
lie.
I guess.
I also don't
guess,
think
but-
she's just forgotten about the teacher thing. I feel like she's giving him his last chance because he's saying this is his last chance to do this. So she's trying to support him in that moment. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Yeah.
I guess.
All right,
Do it for
so Joe's looking spiffy. So 22 and Joe walk back to the club, and it is dusk in New York City. And wee it's fucking gorgeous. The city fucks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
New York City.
There's a lot of really insane shots of New York that I'm just like, man, how did they do this?
So
Like
good.
when he's like walking, or Joe's body is like walking behind other people who are in front of him, and then you still get the crowd shot behind, like that's just like that depth and lighting that
Yeah.
happens. It's like, whoa, what's
Yeah.
happening here?
It's really well done.
It's good stuff. There's some really nice banter between Joe and 22 here. 22 is starting to notice people, things, sights, sounds, and senses around her. And Joe realizes that 22 is enjoying her time on Earth. And this is when Moonwind shows up to reunite Joe with his body. But plot twist, 22 decides she doesn't want to go back to the Great Before. She takes off, and Joe chases her into the subway, where Terry traps them into a portal back to the Great Before. So they leave Joe's and the cat's bodies and are once again blue souls back in the blue land. They're reunited with the Jerrys, and they realize that 22's Earth badge has filled in. And that means it's time for her to go. So Joe accompanies 22 to the Earth portal, but then they argue and she throws her badge at him and walks away. So Joe's a little lost at this point, confused. And so he talks to a Jerry who explains to him that a spark isn't a purpose. And this is really like what Joe had kind of assumed through the whole movie, was that your spark is your purpose. Music inspired me, and so music must be my purpose in life. A kid loves basketball, so basketball is their purpose in life. But Jerry tells him that's not the case.
Laura loves thrifting. Thrifting is her purpose in life.
I wish.
Laura likes to watch Drive to Survive. Drive to Survive is now her purpose in life.
If you say so.
Brad's playing Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate... No, just...
Yeah, it really is.
It'll be his purpose in 45 minutes. So Joe doesn't accept this.
Sam's is canned wine, by the way, if anyone's wondering what her purpose in life is Sam's
is what?
Canned wine.
Oh. It does light a certain spark, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So Joe's just like, now, Jerry, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going back to Earth. And once he gets to Earth, the cat is reunited with its carer, and 22 skips off to the mystic realm, or like the zone that we talked about where Moonwind and his mystic pals hang out. So we're back in real life on Earth in New York City, and Joe, his soul in his own body, rushes to the club where Curly tells him it's too late, but Joe confronts Dorothea, who calls him arrogant, but puts him on that stage. And then we get a cute medley of songs performed by Joe, Dorothea, and the others. They are killing it. Dorothea officially welcomes him to the quartet, and his mom is there. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying, Sam. So as they're celebrating after the performance, Joe confesses to Dorothea that he thought he'd feel different. And as he's riding the subway home, Joe looks around and sees this crowd of really like absent people who just like are not really aware of their surroundings and are just like going through the motions in life rather than really living. So when he gets home and he empties his pockets of the items that 22 collected, he discovers a sucker, part of a bagel, a spool of thread, a pizza crust.
Can I just interject?
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I was gonna say just I think the key moment with the Dorothea and the Joe conversation that came out of it was just that his whole purpose in life that he built for himself was music and jazz, and this whole movie is building up to this for him anyways, for Joe, is that he needs to get back on Earth for this show because this show is going to turn his life around, and he plays the show. And she gives like a perfect analogy about fish and water and the ocean. It sums up to be like he thought something would switch once the show happened and once the success happened, but he feels nothing has changed really. And so that's when he starts to kind of like ruminate on what you're about to say and like the meaning of life, because it's like, oh, maybe this isn't the thing, maybe this isn't the purpose in life. Is that what you're gonna say, Sam? Something like that?
Yeah, that's what I was like. That's an important part. I feel like, because he's like, I thought it would feel different, and then she's like says her thing, and then she's like, yeah, we're just gonna do it all tomorrow. Like again, and it's like, oh no, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so he's home. He takes out all these items from his pocket and lays them out in front of him on the piano, and he begins to play. And he's kind of like inspired by these items that 22's collected. And we get some flashbacks to his time with 22 and then further back to his childhood, growing up, playing piano for his aging father. And he remembers a conversation with 22 where she was talking about sparks and he was talking about purpose. And this is when he really realizes and accepts that those two things are not the same. So he closes his eyes and plays, and he finds himself in the zone where he actually wakes up as the soul version of himself in the zone where Moonwind and his friends exist. And Moonwind tells him that 22 has become a lost soul. So they chase after her on the pirate ship through the mystic realm back to the blue great before.
Because she's technically lived now, he says.
Right.
So she can now be a lost soul.
Yes, because she was in a human's body.
Yeah.
True. On Earth. And so Lost Soul 22, this monster thing, is growing and growing and is clearly quite scared as well. And she finds herself on the edge of the Earth portal. And Joe tries to give her the Earth badge, but she eats him. And then inside this scary lost soul monster, we see the soul of Joe and the soul of 22 in this kind of dark, windy, sandy world inside the monster. And this is where we start to hear 22's inner monologues. And it's pretty bad. And it's not only the negative things she's said to herself, but also memories, including a shadow of Joe telling 22 she has no purpose. But then he comes across the little leaf. What are those little leaves called? You know, the ones?
Helicopter leaves.
That's what I know them as. Yeah. They're like seeds from maple trees.
I think so. Oh, maple keys, I think they're called. But yeah, helicopter leaves. Yeah. So Joe finds one of those and he gives it to 22, and that transports them back to New York, sitting on the sidewalk when Joe's soul was in the cat and 22's soul was in Joe. And Joe explains to 22 that a spark isn't a purpose, it's a sign that you're ready to live. So then we go back to the Earth portal and the Great Before, and Joe picks up the Earth badge and gives it to 22. And in giving it to her, it means that he won't get to live, but it's okay because he says he already did. Sam cries.
No.
Oh, can't wait to hear your thoughts.
It was a dry house.
Yeah. And so Joe tells 22 he'll go as far as he can with her, and together they jump into the Earth portal. As they, fall towards Earth, he eventually lets go of her hand, and she continues towards Earth while he's transported back to the conveyor belt. But twist, Jerry's behind him and tells him the Jerrys have decided that he deserves another chance. And as she opens up a portal to Earth for him, she asks him what he's going to do. And Joe says he doesn't know, but he's going to live every minute of it.
I also like how he's like, isn't Terry gonna be upset, and
Oh,
they're like,
yeah.
we figured it out with Terry. It's just like, hey, look at that over there. And
Yeah,
they change the numbers. And they're like, okay, bye.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And this is where we get the end card or the title card, Soul.
Yes.
And this is where we get the
Yes.
title card.
This
So
is where we finally
my
get it.
interpretation of it was that like Pixar presents, they want like they were trying to like be like kind of like artsy about it, where they would like the whole movie leads into the title card. It's like Pixar presents whole movie Soul, and like that's how I saw it. Because why else would it be like that? Because you don't know what the
'cause now
soul is until. You know what I mean? Anyways.
Yes, exactly. Because it's like in the movie how they need to get their spark and then they're ready. It's like
That's
he needs
it.
to
That's how I
find
saw
his
it.
spark and then it's ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Good
then,
job, Laura.
yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and then we get the
thank
credits
you.
and some sweet Davi Diggs rapping at the end.
Yeah,
Love
yeah.
Rapping said is the name and you should get it right.
Well, great. Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. Wonderful summary.
Oh, my
Felt like
pleasure.
that was a really good one. So yeah, what Sam, I'm gonna skip you for a moment, but let's go back to you, Laura. What did you think of the movie after having just summarized it?
I think my feelings changed a lot on the second watch. Like the first time I watched it, I was like, yeah, that was good. But this time I think I was a lot more critical of it. And specifically when we went from New York City to the Great Before, I was like, oh, I wanted to stay in New York. And then when we went back to New York and the souls were in the cat's body, I was like, I just want to see Joe be Joe. And I guess I would have just preferred a movie about Joe than the movie that we saw.
But it is kind of about him too, right? Like,
I mean, it is about him, but
yeah.
I would love to like see his life without the inside out perspective on it.
I
I just want to see him
Just jazzing in New York.
becoming a teacher. And
It's about him, but it's also very about 22.
Yeah.
So it's like
Well,
a shared movie.
co-leads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, why don't you jump in and give us your negative take on this?
Okay, guys, I'm not just like being a hater.
I feel like you're being
like,
me from last week with
Onward.
what was it? Onward.
I guess, kind of. Like, I don't remember loving this movie to begin with. So, I mean, I went in and I was like, okay. And I liked the same parts I remembered liking before. Like, I do like the Jerrys and like there's some fun visuals, but I just feel like the story doesn't really do it enough for me to care to probably revisit this one again. It's like, if I really want to, maybe I'll like look up YouTube bits of the Jerrys. Like, I don't know, but I agree. It's just like the tone just feels like it shifts for me between these worlds, which is fine, but I just didn't really ever get, enough of either. I feel like kind of what Laura just said.
I was going to say, especially like in terms of tonal shift when they get into like the body swap, like it suddenly becomes like this slapstick comedy. And I'm like, this isn't what I'm
Becomes
Yeah.
a fish out of water thing happening.
Yeah,
right?
which is not what, and so that's, I mean, I feel like there's ideas in here that I like, and the like whole soul, like soul personality stuff is fun. Like there's so many fun ideas in here. I just feel like the whole like story cohesiveness isn't enough for me, because when they become a cat, then it's just like, okay, a series of things that happen and it's kind of like whatever. I also don't find Joe like maybe I would be more into him if it was his own movie and we got more time with him, but like he's kind of being a real Steve McQueen, he's like not nice to the kids. He's
Steve McQueen.
sorry, Lightning McQueen.
Oh,
This has happened
I was
before.
like,
This has happened
Lightning
before.
McQueen.
Sam
I was going to
calling
say,
Lightning.
which Steve McQueen are you talking
No,
about?
he's being a real Lightning McQueen, where I feel like he's just like not the most likable, and like I want to like Joe, and I don't think he's like not a likable guy. I just don't think we see enough of that, maybe because like all we get is him kind of like not caring about the kid, and then like him like taking 22's badge at the end and like being like, no, like you're only because of me, and like just like zero introspection. I get he gets that later, which is great, but it's just so late into the movie where he kind of turns around that I'm like, man, it's like taken me quite a while to get here.
I think that like that is, I think, supposed to be his character though. He's very self-centered and like he is his own world. Like even with the barber shop where the guy's like, oh, I didn't know like you wanted to be a doctor or whatever it was, and the guy's like, well, you never asked. You just always talk about jazz and like what's going on with you. You don't talk about me at all. So you really get the sense throughout the movie that Joe is just so like centered on what he wants and what he needs, and he internalizes everything and pushes everybody and everything else away.
And
And
that
then the movie ends with him finally coming out of that.
And I think that's a real personality trait of many people. I forget the specific term, but this like pity party that you have on yourself, the thing where you're like, man, like I'm so talented and no one's recognizing me and all this stuff. So you're like, you're projecting like this like pity party and that's what he has the entire time. And then he has a shot, he does the jazz thing and then realizes life is more than just, jazz and
maybe that's all good and fair and that is who he is, but maybe I just don't want to watch 2 hours of that character. I don't know, that's fine. Like, yeah, like again, that's what I mean. It's like the story is like fine, and I think there's things that are good about it, but it didn't really like evoke anything super out of me. Like I don't know, like I do like the parts about being in the zone, and as an artist myself, like I like the idea of playing with this like your personality really tied into what you do kind of idea. I think the story and the ideas in here are good. I just don't think the like final product really does it for me. And then I'll just, so that I can stop being a Debbie Downer for the rest of this podcast, I'll read my one other critical review, because I already talked about how the one critic who was like, we've taken a few steps back here with racial sensitivity because of the turning black character into creatures thing. That was like one review, and then I was just like reading on another, because I do remember reading, people were, I think, critical. This movie was like received really well, but it was like coming off a time where I do think we were putting this kind of stuff under a microscope a lot more. Like Central Park had a black character that was voiced by a white person that they recast, and I think everyone was starting to like be like, we need black creators in the writing room if we're going to be telling these stories. And I think this was a time where we were all like kind of had the spotlight on that as well. So I do remember like reading like takes that were both good.
The huge like bigger boom of Black Lives Matter, right? Like
George Floyd just happened. Yeah. Like everybody was kind of thinking about everything. And so I do remember, like, as much as it was praised, I remember seeing criticism. So I was just kind of looking up some other like takes, and I have this one here where Charles Pulliam Moore wrote that Soul comes across less like an earnest and casual celebration of everyday blackness and more like a twee depiction of it that's meant for a white audience's consumption. Critical essay of the film, citing among other issues, not only does 22 use Joe as a vehicle, but the movie must also make the grandiose and a grotesque claim that he has learned to live through her. So they're kind of like interconnected in this weird way that I remember reading about, going like now watching the movie for a second time. I was like, oh yeah, like Tina Fey, like he like basically has to die for her to like live, but then of course he does get to live again, so it's great and whatever. But I was thinking about it and I was like, Tina Fey's writing is like good for the character, and I know she did like ad-lib stuff, but I feel like you could have like had like a young like black actor voice 22 and it would have been just as good. Like I don't think Tina Fey needed to be 22, and I feel like maybe it would have been received a little better at least if that was the case, because I think her being like a very clear like middle-aged white woman interacting and being such a like big part in the story was just like, at the time, especially like I said, when like all eyes were on it, is like it was just a little more glaring, I feel like. So anyways, that's all I have to say about all that. I think it's fine. I don't hate this movie. Like I think it's like I wouldn't be like, don't watch it, but it's just not for me. The end.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, I don't really have much to say. I'm like a white guy, so I feel like there's plenty of the opposite take of that as well. And I don't know, that kind of take to me is a little bit disingenuous to the amount of black people that did work on this film and did put their input in and were totally fine with it.
Oh yeah.
I think it's just reading a lot into it to be like, oh, the white woman inside the black guy had to die for the white woman. But again, I'm a white guy, so I can't really speak to it. I'm not saying that they're wrong or it's right. I just think it's a kid's movie, and maybe that's a little too introspective for what they were going for, in my opinion. I mean, we can get to it later, but like they had a whole panel or a whole, I forget what they called it now, but it was a whole like council of like, because I guess Pixar has like what's it called, where you have like the community of like women or black people or like
focus
whatever,
groups?
and they.
Yeah,
Sorry?
I'll get into it in particulars, because that only comes together, like 2 years into writing this because I feel like they knew they needed to start doing this. So
Yeah.
I that's the thing. It's like they did try. I'm not saying they didn't try, but like, baby steps, I guess. And it's
Right,
just...
like they show the black barber shop. I
Yeah.
thought that was one of the
Oh
cooler
yeah, and that
spots
was
in
good
the
and well
movie.
done. I remember at the time reading, I think it was Debbie Diggs too, who was like talking about when they first came on and how you could tell there was no like there was a lack of diversity in the writing room because they were looking at the first shots of the subway or like downtown like New York shots, and there was just like such a lack of diversity in the crowds, and they're like, have you ever been at a subway station? Like, and so like they obviously brought them in and like righted those a bit. So it's like obviously yes, they were like conscious and put like work into it. So I feel like that's fine. I think you can do both. You can like try to be doing better and still miss the mark on a few things, which is just what I think happened here. Yeah.
Well, what did you think of it, Tung?
I think I came away with it very similar to how I felt the first time. Maybe this time I tried to dig deeper into it, and I really try to appreciate it on like really let the message try to like wash over me and in a way, or absorb into me, and try to like get what they're talking about with this whole spiritual soul stuff, because like that stuff resonates with me.
You got it.
Laura threw me off the other day because she's like, you're using the word resonate wrong, and I'm like, oh no,
most people do.
Oh, because if I resonated with soul, that'd be wrong, right?
Yes, correct.
But if soul resonated with me, that's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Anyways, so I'm thrown off now because grammar has never been my strong suit. So yeah, younger and even now, like every once in a while, I get into like a spiritual like mindset. I'm not like religious, but I do try to get into that like meaning of life and like what's the purpose of life, and to like a surface level thing. But I think about these things sometimes, and I was curious at how Pixar was going to depict that. It's not even the afterlife, really. I mean, kind of. It's the soul world, right? And I was
before life,
before, and then in between, and like I don't know. Anyways, so overall, I think that the way they handled that entire message, like as a whole, I thought they did a good job with. There were times when I felt like a little stirred, but I never felt like I never felt gut punched like I do in all the other Pixar movies. But I did feel something when like you see Joe looking around, or would have been 22 in Joe's body when you hear like the rustling of the leaves and the wind and the trees.
Very Tree of Life.
Yeah, very Tree of Life, and also very on mushrooms type of thing. That's how I feel on mushrooms. And I was like, yeah, this feels like a great way to describe a feeling that is hard to describe, and like you appreciate the little things in life. Yeah, I think the big thing for me taking away from it was just how freaking gorgeous a lot of the shots were in this movie. When I reflect on this movie, I'm going to think about like how the food looks, how New York looks, how the Jerry and Terry's move, and the soul world, and the wherever Moonwind is, that sandy area and stuff like that. Like that stuff like consistently blew me away, just how that stuff moved.
The like light that they're with the escalator going into the light with all the dots everywhere, and that was pretty insane.
Yeah, and like Laura had to tell me to save it for the cast at one point because I was like, that's so cool. Because like Terry moving in the real
Terry
world.
in New York.
Terry moving in New York, and like being those like light images on like traffic lights or like being on the chips. And like I was just like, this is so cool. I thought that was awesome. Yeah, I'm not sure if I completely agree with... I think I'm with Brad in the way that you can really nitpick this movie. I definitely see the point, I guess, of what people are trying to make of it. But yeah, it is like it reminds me of like how nowadays when we make anything in like a BIPOC movie of some sort, someone's gonna rip it apart for the littlest things. Like they're like, what movie was it? In the Heights is a great example where they're trying to be inclusive, but then like people are like, well, that's not actually the right demographic and the stuff in the movie, even though they tried. They tried. Shang-Chi, something like that too, where people are like, well, those are the wrong types of Asians. Like, it's just like, at what point are we going to just discuss a movie on its own terms and its own merits. And like, those are all good points and they should be discussed. I'm glad we are, but it feels like we are in a very era. And this reminds me of this 2020. Is this when this movie is?
Yeah.
Where we really nitpicked on everything happening, and that's still
Yes.
true to this day, but especially back then it was just like everything's under a microscope. So maybe I'm just exhausted by those types of conversations, and that's kind of on me. But anyways, I think the line that I think about consistently, because I think it's well written, and it's kind of thrown away because 22 just like says it as like a kind of like a jab, but she said, "Is all this living worth dying for?" And like that to me is like just like a nice, like cool line that also some like a high school student who is also very high on mushrooms would say as well. So it could work both ways. Yeah, I think overall I like this movie. I don't know how much it's going to stick with me, but I think it works more than it doesn't. And I have nothing really too negative to say about it. Although now that you guys bring up the cat stuff, that didn't really bother me while I was watching it, but I can totally see how it could. But it doesn't completely brave you, I guess. Like I don't think you're getting roped into the wrong movie like Brave did. Like they're still on brand talking about the meaning of life and what it means to like live and
It's
soul.
just not original.
Sure, but it's not Brave. So
No.
I think it's different than that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, well, I think I did not, like I said at the beginning, very much remember this movie or like it very much. But I think I forget what the moment was now. I should have written it down. But there was a certain moment in the movie where I was like, oh, do I actually like really like this movie now? And I feel like it was towards the end when maybe it's when Joe's coming to the realization that like seeing through 22's eyes now, where like 22 was seeing through his, and he was seeing like the seeds fall and he's seeing the clouds and like all that stuff. And I was like,
like when he's like playing the piano and seeing his family, I thought was like a nice little tender moment. I thought that was like, because you didn't see that part of the movie yet, but now you're seeing like, oh, where his inspiration for life, just life in general, has happened, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really kind. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and you also see a lot of from the whole, no, not the whole of everything, the place he was before that, where you see like all
His
of your
museum.
past.
Yeah,
the museum, and you see like, for instance, him sitting alone eating a pie or whatever in a diner, but then you see that moment in context and he's like loving that pie, and he's just like, he is enjoying the moment, but looking back on it, he doesn't, I guess, remember that as much. So my point is I actually, compared to the first time I saw it, and compared to Onward last week, I came away really liking this movie. I don't think it's a movie I'm like seeking to watch again immediately, but I did really like it. For a lot of the reasons that I feel like a lot of you didn't necessarily like it because of the changing of like situations and like tone. I actually did like that myself. I found like every 20 minutes, it's basically the movie's a new movie now. It's like for 20 minutes, it's Joe in New York, and then it's 20 minutes with him with Jerry's, and then 20 minutes as a cat, and then 20 minutes in this area. And it's like, it's constantly jumping all over, which I could see how that's annoying, but
like 30 minutes of him as a cat.
Yeah, 30 minutes. They squeezed out a little more time as him as a cat. But I kind of like that. It felt a little more like, as heavy as the subject matter was for the movie, it wasn't as heavy as a lot of the more recent Pixar movies.
Sure, yeah.
And even the emotional moment, which I did look over to Sam to see if she was crying, was not surprised that she wasn't, because this movie doesn't like hit as hard as those other ones.
No.
But I kind of like that because Pixar doesn't always have to like swing for the fences, and like I was getting tired of the constant like Pixar just punching you into the ground with emotions. And this movie, again, for as heavy as it was, it had some levity to it, I thought.
Although I will say I agree with you there, Brad, but I think they tried. I think
they tried.
I think they thought that would be the moment, right? Like I think the moment of like, I already had my life, now have yours, or like him like looking back on his past life while he's playing the piano, like those things, like I felt it, but I didn't like, oh yeah, baby, I'm in that Pixar zone. Like I didn't feel that, but I feel like they wanted you to feel that.
Oh, for sure. They definitely did. But it kind of felt a little bit more like the earlier Pixar
Yeah.
movies where you could tell that's what they were going for, but it wasn't, yeah, just the gut punch that they
Yeah.
became known for.
I think
Um,
the emotions didn't feel as big, but the themes felt bigger than other
oh
Pixar
yeah.
movies, which have sometimes like honed in on such specific circumstances. And
Yeah,
I liked that about it. I just don't like
mhm.
how they got there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And yeah, I mean the music was good. I thought the voice acting compared to Onward was actually really good.
I don't know. I think
The,
Chris Pratt should have done Joe, honestly. I just think
when he's in the cat, it's suddenly Chris Pratt.
Oh my god!
Hey guys, it's me, it's Garfield.
But yeah, and like Tung said, like the visuals, I thought this time really stuck with me a lot more. The Jerrys were great. I picked out a lot of the voices this time compared to the first time. I definitely didn't pick them out, but maybe I'm just getting to know a lot more of those actors and actresses. But I was like, hey, it's that person and this person, and
Fortune
so that was
Famester.
good. Yeah, and so yeah, I think I don't know. I came out of the movie being like that was fun compared
Hmm.
to a lot of the previous Pixar movies where I'm just like emotionally drained or
Yeah.
like it's just and that's why I'm like it's such a heavy subject but lighter than some of the recent Pixar
It
movies,
is,
which I
but I
thought was
think they
interesting.
overall, like to me anyways, they overall landed on what they wanted to say about like
Yeah.
living, like every minute of it. I think that was like that's a nice line, that's a nice touch. And then like, yes, the whole Joe arc of being like, yeah, your passion doesn't define you as a person. Like these other parts do. I think those are all really good, but I see your points on like how it kind of can get kind of messy for some, like Sam and Laura.
Yeah, yeah,
But not
and,
as
yeah, just
high
kinda-
brain people over here like Brad and I.
yeah, I like to just turn my brain off and
High
take in
brain
pretty
people.
visuals.
High brain people.
But yeah, so that's what we all thought. A little spicy episode
Yeah, no
today
kidding.
about this
Yeah.
movie. But yeah, so diving then into some source material. There wasn't really a ton that I could necessarily find on this. It is Pete Docter, who also did Inside Out, which back, because I know you brought it up, Tongue, and I concurred that it felt very Inside Outy to me with like the texture on the ground and the souls and stuff. And then now that we've been doing this, I was like, oh, Pete Docter. I'm like, that's probably why, because he did the other movie as well. And apparently he did some of the early sketches for the souls. So he conceived of this movie in 2016 as he was examining the origins of human personalities and the concept of determinism, as we all do from time
As
to
we all do.
time. Yeah, so that's where this movie came from. It's interesting because sometimes it's like some long preambled thing, but this one was just like, no, he was just like probably stoned on mushrooms and just being like, what is life? So yeah, he originally pitched the idea of it all taking place, I guess, on the astral plane, involving souls with personalities, and then it developed from there. So that took 4 years, or it was 4 years of production. But the first 2 years were just developing Joe, the main character. And originally they were going to make him a scientist, which I could see how that's like the easy answer. But they eventually landed on obviously music and him being a jazz piano player.
Jazz is all about soul, man.
Yeah, it seems like it was a no-brainer now. But yeah, so then we might perhaps get into it in particulars a little bit. So maybe this will segue into that. But it was apparently there were test versions of the film endings. Did you have any of this stuff, Sam?
No, not about the filming endings.
Okay, so apparently, basically, like all the way up to more or less the end of the making of the movie before it released, they were testing the movie with different endings. So obviously, one would be the movie ends with him basically pondering whether or not to continue to the great beyond or go back, and that's kind of where the movie ends. So you don't actually see him go back. Another one has us returning to the Earth a year later and seeing like what Joe's up to and 22's up to. Another one is Joe becoming a mentor in the area with the souls, like permanently, which is kind of where I thought the movie was going. I remember when I first watched it, I was like, oh, it's obviously going to end with him being a mentor. And then one of the other, there were storyboards that were done that were of some brief scenes showing 22's life on Earth after like she gets there, and including one where she reunites with Joe in New York.
Cute.
So yeah, I guess they went through a lot of different endings until they found their spark, the one that sparked with them.
I did like
Spoke to
that
them.
scene where they're like falling together, where she's like scared and he's just like, I'll fall with you as long as I can, and like holding hands, and then they finally let go. I thought that was nice. Sam's nodding. Finally nodding at a good part of the movie.
It's a resigned
You guys are
nod.
making me out to sound so much worse than I
Where's
am.
your soul, Samantha? All right,
Where's the
Steve.
soul of this movie? Joe!
Wow.
Oh man, yeah.
Speaking of,
You guys want to see me evil? I'll go with you.
speaking of souls, Samantha, do you want to give us some Pixar soulsers? I tried to get that.
That was awful, Brad.
Pixar soulticulars?
Yeah. So I'll scrap my first one. It was kind of about how I was going to be a scientist. I kind of like on that same vein of where this movie came from. You kind of talked about Pete Docter and stuff, and he was like wondering what to do with the rest of his life because, well, that sounds like drastic, but like after the financial and critical success of Inside Out, it's like, what's left for me? What's left for me to accomplish? Which I feel like is the moment Joe has where it's like, oh, like I've done it. Like, so I feel like this is very much an extension of that kind of feeling for him. And I think that's where when movies like lean into like personal experience stuff, I think that's where we get the strongest moments. And I do think that is one of the stronger moments in this movie for me. And I feel like, yeah, that was probably one of the moments where like they knew that was going to be in there. Like that felt like a core part of the movie. So and I think it shows. The production baby parts of the credits. I don't know if we've ever talked about that, but in most movies, they have production babies in the credits. In this one, they're titled Recent U Seminar Graduates.
Oh,
they all just became
so cute.
real people.
That's the cutest part of the whole movie.
You're right. Isn't that cute? I thought that was cute. And at the end of this movie, I don't know if you guys caught it too, it also says created by Pixar, but then it says in homes at least 6 feet away from each other in the Bay Area, referencing the fact that this was a COVID movie and people had to work from home.
Okay. Is this, do you know if this is the time when they started doing the voice acting from home too? Or do you think it was mostly like the animation stuff?
I think that might have been before. I mean, it's hard to say with animation because even before COVID, depending on the production, some people didn't have to meet anyway for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you hear about people like riffing and being really good in studio together, but sometimes you hear about people that call in from other places. So without going too far into it, I don't really know. I would assume the voices would have been done before the restrictions though.
It was Raya. That was the movie that they had to like send in like all the kits and stuff to people's houses, and all of it was done from home, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I
is
don't
this
think
around
this
the
would have
same time?
all been
Yeah.
done by home because like this movie came out that Christmas 2020. So I mean, we were sent home in March. Like I would assume they were underway before then. But
Oh yeah, so it was Onward and Soul in the same year?
yeah.
Wow.
They were.
Cool.
I know. So John Ratzenberger, who we often talk about in particulars because he voices a movie in every movie, actually isn't credited in this film. However, Pete Docter revealed that he does cameo in the film. His likeness is used for a character in the subway. So we don't hear him, but we kind of get to see him, I guess. As Brad mentioned earlier in the podcast, in order to accurately portray African American culture within the film, the filmmakers hired several consultants with whom they worked closely through the film's development. Among them were several Pixar employees, musicians Herbie Hancock, Terry Lynn Carrington, Quincy Jones, and John Batiste, educator Jonetta B. Cole, and stars Questlove and David Diggs. I remember hearing that David was coming on as a consultant in this kind of role, and I knew he had a voice. I remember the first time watching this with Brad, actually, because we had just seen Hamilton, and I was like hot on the David train. And I remember the whole
big
movie.
in our house.
I remember the whole movie waiting to hear who he was, and I was like, "Is that just like waiting?" And then he's like this tiny. He's Paul. He gets traumatized.
He's the frenemy that gets traumatized.
Yeah. So it's a
okay.
very quick little part, but I remember being like, "Ah, there he is."
They didn't even get him to rap.
He
I
does in the
know.
credits. He gets the last
I
song.
know. I just wanted
That's
a character
true.
Paul to like bust a rhyme.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So Kemp Powers, I don't know, he wasn't really listed in part of that committee, but he was brought on to help write, and he joined as a co-writer early in development to help with the whole character of Joe. And he was initially given a 12-week contract, which was then extended. So he was subsequently promoted to co-director after that extension, making him Pixar's first African American co-director.
Neat.
So that's cool.
And he's got a bitching name.
Kemp Powers. Yeah,
Kemp
it's pretty
Powers.
cool. This is the first, I mean, we've kind of touched on this too, but the first full-length Pixar movie not to be released in movie theaters, because technically Onward did get like a baby release before everyone was sent home. So this is the first one to not get any release in theaters, except for now, if listening at home, it like was released last month because they're now releasing all these movies that didn't get released. So yeah,
last
this one's
month
straight to
being
stream.
January as of this recording.
As of this recording, yeah. And
I don't know when
guess,
this episode
yeah,
is.
2024.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Turning Red is in theaters like now. You can
yeah.
like as of this recording on February 27th, Red is like in theaters, and then I guess maybe they'll do Luca after. I don't know if they've been like rolling them out. I think Soul was done already, and now they're doing Red, and then
But Luca
I think
came
so.
I think
after.
Luca was.
I know, but I
already
don't
too.
know if they're Luca
I think
hit
they were
theaters
all like
already?
1 week after each other. I saw an ad for it
maybe.
recently.
All I know is Red's in like right now, and Soul's done.
Turning Red.
Yes, Turning Red. So Pixar was mindful of the history of racist imagery in animation and set out to create characters who were recognizably Black while avoiding stereotypes in cartoons. Acknowledging this effort, Pete Docter stated that there's a long and painful history of caricatured racist design tropes that were used to mock African Americans. So according to Kemp Powers, who we said was brought on, the animators used lighting as a way to highlight ethnic diversity between the characters in the living world. Pixar sought to capture the fine details of these Black characters, including the textures of Black hair and the way light plays on various tones of Black skin. And they had like special cinematographers come in and work on as a lighting consultant for those things as well. Almost done here. Pete Docter began filming in began developing the film in January 2016. Oh, and this is where I just had the note about him meeting with his co-writer, Mike Jones, and pitching the idea. But I think Brad maybe talked about this, how it's like set in a place beyond space and time where souls are given their personalities. So that was the like elevator pitch. Easter eggs. Hidden A113 Easter egg. I highly doubt anyone got them this time because they're a little
Are they
weird.
abstract?
They are abstract.
Ooh.
Well, okay, so the first one, this one's so weird. I don't know piano technology or terminology that well. So I
Forte.
don't even know if I'll say this right. But okay, does anybody know what HZ stands for? Hertz? Is that Hertz?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I
Anyways,
think so, yeah.
when Terry is searching for Joe, she pushes a key on the piano, which is an A2 note. A2 on the piano, normally 110 hertz, on a detuned piano, which, if you check the tuning, is actually 113 hertz.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Yeah, yes.
Yo, Pixar's
Yeah,
getting
so
more
it's-
weird with that one. Like in
Yes.
Onward, it was like the police call, and in this one,
Yeah.
that's cool. I like that.
It's like a musical key thing.
Wow.
And
That's
Toy
so
Story
nerdy.
4 was like a poster. Yeah.
Yeah,
they're
it's very
going,
nerdy.
yeah.
And there's technically a second one here that is like, this one might be next level and maybe it's just coincidental, but this one isn't even. So the classroom that Joe teaches in, I mean, like classrooms have always been the easy out, but instead of A112, it's B213.
What?
I don't know if that's even a thing because it's like A, B, 1, 2. Anyways, they're saying that it's like one above. It's just like a dumb reference where they just like leveled it up. Oh, the next level. Yeah, anyways. And then we already talked about this too. The first Pixar movie to have a title card at the end instead of the beginning, which makes it the longest cold opening for a Pixar film.
That was a hot take for me. I didn't know that was true.
And then for animation angle, I'm just going to slide
But
right
where's
in. I only
the
have
Pizza
two.
Planet truck and the Luxo ball?
And the Luxo ball.
I skimmed by those and I didn't write them down. I'm sorry, folks.
we
I
gotta
don't
find
know.
them. We gotta find them.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'll find them and get back to you after this segment.
Okay.
Animators, so animation angle. Animators used footage of several music performances, including jazz composer John Batiste, who did this music for this film, performing as reference for the film's musical sequences. By capturing MIDI data from the sessions, animators were able to retrace the exact keys being placed on the piano with each note and create the performances authentically. So lots of reference here for like musical instrument stuff in this movie.
Mhm.
And also according, like in that same vein, according to Pete Docter, the animators assigned to specific musical instruments often either had experience playing those instruments themselves or like a great appreciation for them. So they really had people on whatever they were like comfortable with to do the animation on those.
Just makes
But
sense.
Yeah.
You're not
yeah,
gonna like put
yeah.
somebody that's like, I hate guitar, and then you give them the big guitar scenes. Like,
Yeah, I feel like even at work, we would often give like guitar scenes on Loud House to like like
yeah,
a guy on our team who plays the guitar. We're like, here,
yes.
you do these.
We know how that
There's
goes.
nothing worse than, yeah, like seeing, say, a guitar, but the character's
Yeah.
hand is just like not animated at all. And it's just sliding up and down, not even like hitting the tune correctly. You don't have to do like the exact finger positions, but like at least make it fake it somehow, you know?
Or when the tuba
Okay.
player's puffing their cheeks out. That's how you play the tuba.
Exactly.
So the Luxo ball is in 22 has like this little room that's all like black and white
Yes.
with some random shit in it. And
The
yeah,
name
it's in
tags
that
of
room.
previous mentors.
Yeah,
Aretha
it's
Franklin
in that
was one.
room. And the Pizza Planet truck is in that big room with all the sparks where you go to find what your spark is. That
Oh,
big
the Hall of Everything.
area.
Smart.
In the Hall of Everything. Yeah, the Pizza Planet truck is in
Ah,
there.
that's it. Okay, that makes a lot of
Nice.
sense.
Well, thank you for going above and beyond with going backwards and getting that stuff. Did you have any more animation angle stuff?
No.
Okay. Well, I've got just a couple things. So, yeah, there was apparently some new cloth generation thing that they used for the first time that, I mean, I don't understand this stuff 100%, but it kind of sounds like they just generate the actual clothing, like literally a piece of fabric at a time, like hairs on it to make the cloth look like it does, which is pretty insane when you think about it, considering like the first Toy Story was just like plastic because that's all they could do.
I will say
Um,
his wool suit looked like wool, not
yeah,
polyester.
yeah. Apparently, it's just like like millions of little hairs to like create
Gross.
the cloth, which is wild. The soles themselves were partially inspired by aerogel, which is like one of the lightest solid materials that we know of. And if you look up a picture of it, it's like it looks like the soles. Like it's kind of solid, but kind of gas at the same time. It's very cool looking. So I thought that was kind of neat because they're like light but solid and like gas but solid. What are they? I don't know. So the Jerrys and the Terrys, they had to develop a new technique to animate those. So they did like their designs and then they modeled them out of like wire in real life. So they used like a single piece of wire to make them.
We saw that
And
in
then
the special there was like a little
yeah,
special. Yeah, we watched that. It was
Astral
cool.
which is so
Taffy.
cool.
Yeah, it was a
And
single
it's-
wire. That's so neat.
Yeah, the single wire, and then they shine a light on it, and the shadow it casts is
Yeah.
like kind of the inspiration they used. And I guess they like developed basically that in 3D. So it was like 3D lines or a 3D wire mesh to, but suggesting a 2D shape. And it sounds very complex. It looks very cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it sounds like that was a whole. I do remember that's one of the few things I do remember from back when this movie was coming out was hearing about the Jerrys and how crazy this tech was that they had to like figure out how to do these 2D shapes, but actually in 3D because it's like a 3D wire mesh, but you see them as 2D, and it seems like a bit of a brain bender. But yeah, that's I think that's all I had. So yeah, you already touched on the textures of black hair and skin and all that stuff.
And the
So yeah,
food.
the food looked amazing.
My
I
God.
mean, the lighting, yeah, obviously just keeps getting better and better. It's a very good looking. As we said, New York itself. There was one shot later, like near the end of the movie, where I feel like the camera starts out really wide and it's going in closer and closer to New York. and there was like a cityscape of the Manhattan Island. And I was just like, man, this looks like I don't I'm like, did they actually make this and render it? And it was like insane.
Yeah, true.
I thought it was like a cool, like just the art style and the animation in this movie where like Soul World was very like cartoony the way it operates. Obviously it has to be because the way they developed it was like, it was cool to hear them talk about it. It's just like, well, nobody knows what that looks like. So you kind of throw a bunch of ideas at it and see what happens. Like, you know, when they're developing the personalities and you're like, you're a narcissist, so go into that little weird flower bubbly thingy. Like the way that was like was cartoony logic. And then like New York itself felt very real. Like it felt like good dinosaur level of realism. Like if you're looking at like the street corners, the lights, the benches, even in the hospital, the chairs look real. In Joe's apartment, all of the objects, saxophone, like all of those things look real. And then the people don't look real. They have their own little style, like, but it also looks really good. And then the cat, which was the weird one, started looking more in like the middle of cartoony and real, because like it didn't look like the cat in Toy Story 4 where like, that cat looked like really, really real until like you got too close to it. And this one, it looked like, honestly, looked like kind of like Garfield for a little bit. So I thought that was like
I couldn't
a cool
put my finger
juggling.
on it.
Yeah.
The design of the cat, I was like, this cat, I don't think it was Garfield, but I was like,
No,
this cat looks like a cat that I've seen in a cartoon before, like a 2D cartoon.
Yeah. Anyways, I thought that was neat. And yeah, I cannot stress the Jerrys and Terrys just fucking moving around and doing their things. It's just like, just so fun to see, I think.
Yeah, and I did read as well. I didn't write anything down about it, but I did, part of what I was reading was about how they intentionally like added all those textures to the real world in New York. But it's like all the buildings are a little bit crooked, and it's just like it's reality, but it's what you think of when you think of reality in a way. So it's like not heightened, but stylistic reality. And then they intentionally made the Soul World more brushes and more that inside out like atmospheric texture on everything, just to really separate those two worlds.
Ethereal kind of thing. Because there's not a lot of like hard edges in the Soul World. I think that's what they discuss in that little special. It's just like things are a little bit more flowy. Oh, another cool thing that they talked about in that special. This is all things that I absorbed. I don't know these things. But it was interesting to hear that like because these soul people, these blue, I don't know, like blobs, these wispy like the soul people, they don't have legs. But to ground them into the ground, they have to like put like a certain reflection on the ground that they're walking.
Shadow?
Quote unquote. Shadow reflection, though. Yeah, it was not just a shadow, but like a little, just a reflection, that glow even, to show that they are, you know, moving on top of like the grass, for example. And then they were talking a lot about like the whatever the Moonwind world is, like that zone world, and how the sand like spreads apart when the pirate ship is on it. It was like it is sand but also acts like the ocean at the same time. Like there's a lot of things going on with that.
Yeah, apparently that world I was reading was just like a ton of work for not much screen time, because they had to animate. They had to like animate all the sand and then like the waves and the boat, and apparently it was just like a ton to do for just a little bit of time. But yeah, a lot of really cool visuals, and the monsters, or the lost souls, how they're like blah, 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 and they like got their octopus arms that they run at you with, like very cool and creepy imagery. But so I think that ends it for animation stuff anyway, which leads us into 5-star, 1-star.
Is the 1 star from Sam? Just kidding.
Yeah, Sam's already given the 1 star.
Guys, I don't hate this movie.
I tease.
But yeah, I don't know if it's just me. It seems to be getting harder to find like short 5-star reviews.
Yes,
They're
yes.
all like, which is like great, but I don't want to read like 7 paragraphs. I found one that I basically just grabbed the very end of it because I thought
that's the play. Honestly, that's the play for 5-star, 1-star these days.
And I thought it summarized the whole movie quite well, which is why I kind of went with this one. But it's from First Reviews, so they seem pretty legit. Okay, so sometimes you just have to live your life, have fun, and enjoy the ride. We all know life gets crazy and hectic and are all guilty of letting it take control. So we are blessed to be living right now, and we often forget what it is like to look up at the stars or to take in the wonderful scent of a flower or getting lost in a beautiful song. Life is made up of small moments. As Joe says, I'm going to live every minute of it. And that was like their ending, which I was like, yeah, that summarizes
Great
the movie.
takeaway.
Nice
Great
little
takeaway.
wrap-up.
from my first
9.2
reviews.
out of 10.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
5-star, 9.2 out of 10.
Point loses 0.8 because there's a body swap moment.
Yeah, I skimmed over I didn't do the body swap part, but yeah. So I thought that, yeah, I just thought that was a really well summarized. Here's what the movie is in a couple sentences. Yeah, which then for 1 star, we've got one from Caitlin Ha, Caitlin Yeah, Haugh. I'm not sure how to say that. So buckle up for this one. Okay. I just had to write a review of this because I don't understand how so many people adored this movie. Reminder, this was rated PG. As an adult of a particular mindset and theology, I thought the movie was creative to an extent. I couldn't help but think and contemplate what kids would learn from this, and if it would be something I would want for my quote unquote theoretical children to be watching. The creators tried tackling a very hard topic with this one, but how much should we add to a kid's imagination with a question mark, exclamation mark? As an adult, I can watch this and soak in the information as hypotheticals, but children can take things as facts. Talking about heaven and hell and an in-between, what? I'm surprised that much of America seems to be okay with others teaching our children particular values and norms that generally would have been taught by families and parents. Then they wonder why our kids are growing up the way they are. We're basically letting corporations, the media, whoever, raise our children. Before you let your kid watch this, really think about what kind of impression you want to leave on your child. You might think it's cute, but if it doesn't align with your values and morals, then communicate that or don't let them watch it.
This is from a
1 star.
hypothetical parent.
There's like no morals in this movie.
Yeah, it's a hot take.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
So pretty
okay.
scathing review.
Wait, it was a hypothetical parent?
Yeah.
They said
Yeah, they don't have
theoretical
children.
children.
They don't have children.
They don't have children.
Get out of here.
So yeah, they're not about this movie. That's fair. Yeah, they can.
I'm gonna send that note to my parents.
Yeah. I know I, for one, like to ignore anything that doesn't reinforce the things I already believe. So I 100% agree with them. All right, which finally leads us into hot takes.
Hot takes.
Hot takes. Hot takes. Hot takes.
Brought to you by the saxophone.
That's smoking hot jazz.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Pizza. Pizza
hilarious.
always wins.
Pizza always wins.
All right. Tongue, do you want to start us off this time?
Yep. Hall of Everything is flawed. How can you tell you don't like food if you can't taste it? Right? In the soul world, you can't taste the food.
Especially-
you can't chew the food, and they're
It's
eating
true.
the pizza, they're pooping it out. It's kind of like
And then
funny.
she loved pizza.
And then she loved pizza.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's a flawed
That's a good
flawed
point.
system.
Interesting.
Point.
Yeah, that is a good
Agreed.
point. Laura, do you have one?
Hot fictional fact. Joe was an unnamed collaborator on Billie Eilish's What Was I Made For? That song could have come from this movie. If you think about it. If you think about the words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could have been from
it
this
could've.
movie.
It could have.
True.
I was
So
just
she
saying.
stole from this movie, you
No.
think? Like the
Maybe she
inspiration?
was inspired by it.
Oh.
Sam, you got anything?
Yeah, Laura almost touched on this, and I feel like had this same thought because in your summary, I was gonna interject, but nobody else on that conveyor belt didn't want to die. Like he's the only one that's freaked out by this.
Yes.
Everyone else is like, yeah, okay. I'm
We
like,
accept
what?
it.
No,
Yeah.
nobody else is
Yeah.
is freaking out.
I can't remember
All
what the
right.
one teen says, but I feel like he runs by some like emo teen and he's like, "Why are you running?" And the teen's just like, "Oh," which is funny. Well, I only have one hot take this time, but who shaves or cuts their hair after showering and dressing. Like,
Yeah.
why
That's a really good
is
point, Brad.
why is Joe trimming Joe's 22's hair after the shower and after putting on that nice suit? It's gonna get hair everywhere.
That's true. That's a bad call. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
wasn't thinking very straight.
Illogical even.
No.
Yeah, so
He's
I'm
too
not here
selfish in
for
that
it.
moment, you know? He turned a student away, all those things. Yeah. Good
All
point.
right, Tongue, back to you.
Pension's overrated. No, that one's for you, Laura. Here's a few. Let's see. I just have a few short ones. I'll rapid fire. Bring back abacuses. Those are cool.
Abakai?
Abakai, I think they're cool. Like, you know,
They're cool.
Yeah.
if he's using them in the soul world, clearly there's something. Like
Yep.
we lost something when we don't use an abacus
Yep.
anymore. I bet you most people don't know how to use one. My grandparents used to have one, so I used to play with it all the time. And they fucking work. They work.
I thought you were gonna say, and they fuck.
And they fuck. Abacuses do fuck. I think they fuck. Here's another one. Sign spinners are underappreciated. That's a hard thing to do.
A real skill.
That's like sign spinners. You know,
Oh.
Moonwind is just
Yeah.
He's just destroying the sign spinning game, and I don't know. I always thought it was pretty cool. But also in media, we are led to believe they get paid the least amount of money to do what they do. Seems nuts to me.
That's probably true, though.
It's probably
Do you
true.
think they
but
get
why?
tips at all? Do you think like kind of like buskers? Like, do you think they sometimes get change
Maybe.
at all?
Like if they put out like a tip jar in front of them, do the company that they work for get those tips?
Probably, yeah.
That makes
So
sense.
next time, listeners at home, you're passing a sign spinner, just slip them.
Tip your sign spinners, everyone. Tip your sign spinners.
Yeah.
Speaking of sign spinners, I'll jump in with a spontaneous hot take, which is shout out to the band Elbow, their song One Day Like This. It's one of my favorite songs. And the music video, if I remember correctly, is just a guy spinning a sign.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you already have that written down, or that? Just
No, it just popped into my head.
Okay. Sam, you got any other ones?
Yeah. The Hall of Everything really wouldn't work for neurodivergent people. I feel like that room is overwhelming as fuck.
Oh,
How are
yeah.
you supposed? You're gonna find one thing. If I was in that room, I would be running from thing to thing. Like, I love this. I love this. I love this. I don't know if that system is.
And you would have got your spark
Yeah.
right away then.
I would have had like 20 sparks, and
Sam
then
would have been on
overwhelmed
fire.
and busted.
Yeah, Sam would have burned the
I
place
don't-
down.
I always took the spark as like a spark of life, like 20. That was 22.
Yeah, I mean, I would have got my
like
earth edge right away.
her
You're
life.
right.
Like she just
Yeah.
had her spark was life in general.
That's true. That's true. In that case, yes, maybe earth edges would come immediately then. Yeah, you're right.
Tongue, back to you.
I'll do a few more rapid fires. This movie has anime food level of detail. You know, like those like Studio Ghibli and stuff like that, where they like really show the food and make you hungry. That's what this movie got me with. Here's a question. So you can get into the zone so much that you can get transported into the soul world. Like, does that mean you can like jump into someone else's body? You know what I mean? Like you like I'm playing piano or I'm podcasting. Look at me. I'm in the zone right now, podcasting with you guys. I'm closing my eyes. Oh, this is so good. Oh, I'm in the soul world. Actually, I want to be in Timothy Chalamet's body right now. You think I can just kind of just jump down? Because I already have my Earth badge. I should be able to do it, right?
No. No.
It doesn't seem
maybe.
like it. Yeah.
No.
I mean, it just seems...
There's also already a soul in the body.
Yeah. He only entered the cat because
Oh.
cats don't have souls.
But they showed like a cat soul come out of the body.
Yeah,
I think it was on the conveyor belt though. That was the confusing part.
And what would happen to your body? It would just like
Fuck
like,
my body.
flop to the ground.
Fuck my body. I'm in
We'd be
Timothy
podcasting with
Chalamet's
you.
body.
We'd be passing
Wait,
out.
hang on a second. If you could swap bodies with anyone,
No,
go
just
for Jamie.
Oh, top 5 body swap.
I'm in Dune right now.
Top 5 bodies I'd swap with. That would be an amazing podcast.
I'm not swapping with him. I'm just taking it over. He can find his
boy.
own body.
Oh yeah, you're not swapping. You're just taking it over. Important distinction.
Yeah.
Laura.
I think this movie is a little bit maybe of a knock on teachers because Joe is a teacher and he's like, yeah, my life was meaningless. And although ultimately he decides that his life wasn't meaningless, it's still kind of get the feeling that like he didn't derive any meaning from teaching.
Maybe that's just for him, though.
Yeah.
He's not. That's not his thing. It's
Yeah.
not his bag, you
It
know?
just,
He's not a teacher.
Some people aren't
Felt a
teachers,
little
and that's
harsh.
okay.
Usually when they make statements like that, they like throw a bone to teachers by bringing in like a different character who's,
Oh,
you know what
yeah.
I mean?
Someone else should have been teaching Connie, that's for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of teachers, we skipped over the quiet coyote thing that the
yeah.
Terry does. I did like that
Yeah,
quiet coyote.
Right? Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Yeah.
Wait, hang on. What's Quiet Coyote? I remember the scene. I just thought one of the kids' names was Coyote.
Never seen
No, I think
Quiet
it's like a
Coyote?
hand gesture.
It's a hand gesture. You never
yeah.
done that when you were kids? Like when like a camp counselor or whatever would be like, quiet coyote. And then like that would quiet all the kids because they would do the same like
Yeah,
hand
you would all
movements
do it.
together.
No.
Yeah, it's like, you know how like they do like clap once if you hear me, clap twice if you hear me. It's just like another like method to like gather a bunch of children to just shut the fuck up.
I didn't know that. I thought one of the souls was named Coyote.
No.
Oh, wow. That's a hot take.
Hot take there, yeah. Well, actually, that's not a hot take. That's just like objectively the wrong take.
Incorrect take.
Sam, you got some more hot takes there.
I only have one thing left, and it's not really a hot take, more of a bit that I wanted to bring up that I really liked. At one point in the Soul World, they make a offhand comment about how we all forget what childbirth feels like, or they're like, one of the great gifts of the universe. And I was like, and I almost turned to Brad in that moment to be like, that's actually true. But then I was like, I guess I have to save it for the cast. But I've heard that that's like a thing that like after you have a child, your body like kind of forgets the pain and trauma so that you'll do it again.
I've heard it about
so
like people who give birth, but not about like the children. I feel like here they were talking about the children,
in a weird
right?
way. In this. Yeah, they made a joke, but the way they phrased it was clear that that's like what it was referring to. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, that was good.
I'm like, that is a great, you know what, hot take, that is a great gift.
All right. Well, Tongue and Laura, do you guys just want to bounce back and forth, rattling
I got a
off
couple.
some
I have a couple
takes?
as well.
Okay. I didn't care about the Soul Worlds, but the Astral Taffy featurette almost made me care about it. The animation is very cool, but I just didn't want to go there in this movie.
Gotcha.
Fair.
I think wearing black and blue is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember in high school, I wore black shorts, and I think it was like, now Laura will roll her eyes, but it was like I forget what I was wearing, like a navy. I had no fashion sense. It was like a navy blue polo, one of my polos I had in black shorts, and I was just walking around, and then one of my friends, quote unquote, were like, just all of a sudden we're with other people, and they're like, you're wearing black and blue? You know those don't go together, right? And I'm like, oh God, I didn't have fashion to begin with, and here I am, I thinking this was good. And yeah, I don't know, don't do that.
There's some weird
I didn't
fashion
even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
It's like
There's
a core
also
memory.
like people also say brown and black shouldn't be worn together, and I'm like, that's bullshit.
Wear
brown
whatever you
top,
wanna
black
wear,
bottoms.
people.
Yeah,
That's
where
it.
were you on?
If the Backstreet Boys can name an album Black and Blue, I should be able to wear black and blue. What's the problem?
You know they weren't talking about their outfits,
No,
right?
no.
Okay, so I have one more take, and it might set a few people aflame, but I'm gonna say it. Terry was completely unnecessary to the story.
Explain.
Terry didn't do anything.
Terry captures.
Terry
Joe
captures Joe, but they could easily have found a different way to bring Joe back to the great before.
again. Maybe.
How would they bring them back?
Jerry goes to Earth.
Jerry doesn't give a shit.
Jerry doesn't care. You need like the try-hard. Who's Terry? Coming around and being a little ninja.
Something goes wrong. What's his name? Moonmind.
Moonwind.
Moonmind does something wrong. Moonwind does something wrong and sends them back to the great before by accident.
Yeah, Terry's a fun little like quarter villain, I guess, in the movie that adds a little bit of like, ooh, they're gonna get captured for doing something wrong. But I don't know. I think he's just like a fun character that has like major short guy energy in the way that like, you know, he's just like, and now we're gonna give this trophy to Terry because he asked for it. After, you know what I mean? Like I think
love that.
That's just a fun little thing.
I love that, Terry.
He needs
you know
constant
what?
validation.
You won't get what you want in life unless you ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
I also don't. We keep saying Terry as a guy, but I feel like it might be a girl.
It was voiced by a woman. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And like,
I feel like
Terry
there's
can
no
be a girl's
gender
name.
in
Yeah,
this
there's no
world.
gender.
Yeah,
Terry
that's
can
a great
be
point.
either name.
Even 22 is saying that they just chose the voice that they had because
yeah.
it's the most annoying
Yeah.
voice. But
Yeah.
she can be anything and anyone. There's
I did
nothing.
like that line. Yeah.
Okay, ending on a hot question here. Jazz off. Here we go. Jazz off. Joe versus Ryan Gosling in La La Land.
Joe. I thought you were going to make us all jazz off right now.
Yeah. No, we already did that at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Joe.
Oh man.
And
I
if
haven't
you-
seen La La Land in a while.
Yeah.
I think probably Joe.
I feel like
Who loves
is better?
jazz more? I think they both love jazz a lot.
I mean, Joe goes to like the astral plane. Did Ryan Gosling and La La Land
Ryan
go to the astral
Gosling
plane?
takes Emma Stone and being like, "You've never seen jazz? We're going right now."
Two things.
Yeah, but then he joins that poppy group,
Yeah.
and then he makes bad choices. So
Joe
I
would
don't know.
never. Joe would never have joined John Legend's band. And
Yeah.
two, if we asked Ryan Gosling, he would say Joe.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
That was my
Ryan
question.
Gosling would say Joe.
Yeah.
Joe.
Ryan Gosling would, but was it Sebastian in that movie?
think so.
Can't believe I remember so much of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It won an Academy Award. What am I saying? Like a bunch.
But it didn't win Best Picture
Yeah, that's true.
because they read the wrong
Cool.
name.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, any other hot takes or anything else about this lovely movie for some of us, I guess?
Yeah, let's go listen to jazz sometime, crew.
I want to go listen to
jazz is
jazz.
sweet. I've been
That
listening
was my
to John
takeaway
Batiste.
from this movie.
Yeah. Live jazz is amazing.
I like to put on some Coltrane when I cook sometimes. Coltrane while you cook.
Is Coltrane jazz?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps it for this episode then. So join us next time where we're all going to be a little fish out of water on the next episode when we're going to talk about Luca.
We're going to Italy.
Silencio Brado.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's going to be a fun one. Hopefully everybody can join us for it. Sam and Laura, would you like to sing us out?
Jazz us out.
Jazz us out.
Bop,